introduction. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this conversation and talk today with one of the inventors of the Lucia #3, introducing Dr. Engelbert Winkler. And today he will be speaking on a few different topics. And if you would like to ask him questions directly, please type them in the chat. And then in appropriate moments, I will raise the questions to Engelbert to keep a nice flow going of conversation and presentation here today. All right, so without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Engelbert.
Okay, so yeah, it's always a little bit different how to start, but the term Ars Moriendi, which is also the title of my workshops in the last year, I would say, means the art of dying, and is a kind of reference to the background of myself, which is a near-death research. And this is also the background the Lucia lamp was developed out of, because the first idea was to simulate a kind of near-death experience in a therapeutical setting to stimulate the therapeutic effect of the near-death experience. And when I first started to do that with hypnosis, it works very well for some people, but not for all of them, as some people are doing not so well with going into a trance state and try to visualize something. So my colleague Dirk Bröckel, the neurologist, had the idea to combine the constant light, which I used at that time, also with a kind of stroboscope to simulate a tunnel experience. And this was the beginning of our work with the lamp, which is a combination of constant light and flickering light. And in the meantime, I can say that it's a very, very good technology for an improvement for classical psychotherapy. You can implement the lamp in nearly every kind of therapeutical setting, be it a kind of analytical therapy where you can use the lamp to open up rooms of associations which are very relevant for the therapeutical process, or you can also use it in behavioral therapy to not so easy to speak in English after all that time. Yeah, anyway, the most important thing I would say in classical psychotherapy is the application of the lamp in the therapy of anxiety disorders, because you can use a lamp very well to induce a kind of panic attack or other anxiety symptoms, which is very helpful in therapy because you can work with it directly, and also which is very interesting, to modify by changing the flickering of the light and the brightness. You can change the experience of the client, and by that helping the client to use the techniques you show him to get control over his own process of anxiety. So it is very helpful. But the more we worked with the lamp in a therapeutical setting, the more we found out that if people allow themselves to go into the light experience and not so and step away from their expectations, just to experience to enjoy the experience by itself, the beauty of the experience as a kind of neuro art experience, I would say, then the therapeutical effect enhances very much and individualizes at the same time. So Dirk and me, we in our workshops, we went away from the therapeutical background more into the art scenery, because there the people are, as soon as you mention therapy, there are those therapeutical expectations and you cannot avoid. But if you present the lamp in a setting which has nothing to do with therapy the first, then it is much easier for the people to tune into the experience just for its beauty. And by that, the therapeutic outcome is much more intense and much more individualized than that. But for me as a psychologist and a psychotherapist, it is, and a near-death researcher, of course, it is very important to mention that to get interested in the topic of dying is one of the best ways to enhance the quality of your life, which sounds a little bit paradoxical, but it is just the way. And it doesn't matter how you do that. Of course, the more directly you do that, the more is the effect, but it is also appropriate just to read books about death and dying from a philosophical point of view, and it has some effects for that. But if you find your way to go into a kind of an experience which is quite similar as a kind of near-death experience, then the effect is most intense, I would say. So what we are doing in the last year is presenting the light experience in a way that first we use the lamp to induce a very intense experience. And after that, we show the people kind of techniques like breathing techniques to go into that state also without a lamp in every situation in their private life or wherever they need it. Yeah. So that's I think much more much more interesting for me than the classical psychotherapy, as the outcome is much more interesting. Would be a good time now for some questions, because I can talk forever, but I do not really know what is most interesting for the people. So I can mention different kind of topics which are interesting for me at the moment, as I returned from the Breaking Convention from Exeter in England, where they also had many talks and new evidence of the therapeutic abilities of the psychedelic state, independently from how the way it is induced, be it with drugs or with shamanic drumming or with breathing techniques. As soon as you find a way which serves you well for going into that state, the things which are interesting from the therapeutic point of view establish by themselves automatically.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. That's a great start. And so speaking to working with anxiety and clients with this, I know a lot of people here in the States encourage people to use breath work and things like that before the session or even during the session initially so that they can drop deeper into the experience. But you're saying that you intentionally make a very intense experience and then teach them these techniques so that when they re-enter, they feel more empowered their own.
But I think that has something to do with my clients I'm working with, because in Austria, the people are not used to the psychedelic experience so much, and they are not so open for that as maybe in other parts of the world. So when I'm talking to my clients about these kind of consciousness, or psychedelic consciousness, they usually do not exactly know what I mean. And so it is very helpful to show them in a way which the lamp can, showing them a very intense experience, and then they know where to go to or what to look for. And if you experience it once, it's usually quite easy to go there again by other techniques. But if you never have been in a psychedelic state of consciousness, as you never taken drugs or never used any kind of techniques, and maybe you just read about it, you have some kind of thoughts about it, and usually it's not appropriate, and then you do not know what you're looking for. And by trying to find something which has something to do with what you read about it or heard about it is usually not a very good way to let yourself go with the experience. So usually we do it first with a lamp, and then we show the people the breathing techniques, and then we combine it with one another. Because if you combine the light experience with the lamp, it is very, very a good way to intensify it in a way that there's nearly no difference to a psychedelic experience induced by DMT or something like that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Great answer. And then Gillian's asking, has the Lucia #3 ever been used in hospice settings?
Yes, yes. I went to the hospice in Innsbruck, I think for a year, every 1 or 2 times a month. And there was especially one patient who suffered ALS, and he died on ALS. And I worked with him for more than half a year. And I would say he liked it extremely much. And the idea, which was my primary intention for working in a hospice setting, was to show people, even in a situation where most of their health is not present anymore, and they can do nearly nothing but lying in the bed and waiting to die, to show them a kind of conscious experience which is no different if they are healthy or sick or dying or something like that. So Viktor Frankl once said that health is a state of mind, which is very deep within us. And if the therapy succeeds to show his client the way to that state of mind, that's the best way of doing therapy. And so it was also for that young man who died on ALS in the hospice. He always was extremely relaxed after the lamp experience, because it did not make any difference for him to go there as a man dying in hospice or as a perfect health, as if he were in perfect health, was no difference at all. And so to stay, just be it for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, in a state of consciousness where you feel perfectly healthy, is something which is extremely encouraging, because your body was not healthy at that time, but you were. And so you recognize that health you experience, the health you experience in that change, in that different kind of consciousness, has nothing to do with your body.
Beautiful. Yes. Really love that. And that can also help reset how you approach life if you're not at the end of life, right? If you can feel that wholeness, then you know nothing is lost in the process of death.
I think that's the main point. And this is the most interesting point for me, as I would say, if you because also when I did the interviews with a lot of people who had near-death experience when I was much younger, it was always that point when the people recognized that they are dying now, and everything which they thought was important for them, or even what they thought they were, goes away, and something which they have overseen for all of that time stays, and that's what they really are. This is so relaxing. And if they are reanimated and after the near-death experience, this is what they say: oh, everything is perfect. Everything is just the way it should be. If you want them to explain that, they cannot explain it, because they say, I've seen that, I've experienced that in that light, and I cannot argue it now, but I know it is that way as I have experienced it. So that's the main point, I would say.
Beautifully put. Yes, absolutely. And someone, Evan, is asking, does the tunnel experience in your experience, correspond with any particular frequency range or constant light exposure?
No, no, no. It's important. Everything is very individual, and it's not that everyone, also with a near-death experience, experiences a tunnel. The tunnel is a metaphoric experience, and I think as you hear so much about tunnels in that context, maybe there is a kind of expectation in the people so that they experience what they expect. But so not everyone experiences tunnels. There are other kind of metaphors which also are described by people after a near-death experience, just like a hallway they are going through, things like that. And sometimes there is a direct entry into the light. And also for the frequencies, as Dirk and me, we were not interested from the beginning on certain frequencies. The idea was just to induce a kind of experience of going through a tunnel and accelerating speed. So we thought that if there is a flicker, which starts very slow and gets faster and faster, it is just like as if you go through a tunnel and the light shows you that your speed is accelerating. So we did not think about certain frequencies. And I think that was good luck that we never did that, because we found out that the people react extremely different on the same kind of frequencies. And even one and the same person, if you show him a kind of combination of frequency one time and the same time of combination of frequency another time, sees something different, totally different. So I would not overestimate the frequencies.
Yeah, perfect. And to just be really clear on that point, then there's no direct relationship between specific frequencies and kind of brainwave entrainment states, correct? It's more about harmonics in the brainwaves. Is that what your intention is?
As far as I would say, and as far as I understand it at the time, I think Dirk might talk about that a little bit more profound than myself, but I would say everyone who speculates about that is doing just that speculation. Nobody knows. And I do not, at the end, nobody knows what's happening in the brain when the brain is stimulated by that. I see it from a metaphorical point of view again, in a way that if you hear a single tone and after a while another single tone and after a while another one, you have single events. And if there is a timely connection between one and the other tone, then you start hearing music. And the music is made by yourself, and it's very, very individual how you experience that. And I think the same happened to us with the frequencies. As we never were interested in certain frequencies, we combined them just very freely and very easily. And by that, and I would say by coincidence, by that we found out that the brain is doing the same. If you present a certain kind of flickering frequency for a certain time, and after, for instance, a 10 hertz frequency, which is investigated scientifically very well, and there are well-known effects which can be induced by the 10 hertz frequency, by the alpha range. But if you combine the 10 hertz, for instance, with 16 hertz, and the brain does the same as with single tones you hear. It individualizes, it makes a new dimension of experience. It's not the 10 hertz and the 16 hertz is something new. The combination makes something which was not in the 10 hertz and was not in the 16 hertz. But what it is always individual. So the best thing is to check it out, what for a certain person is the best outcome in combination of the frequencies.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, we're all individual. And David was asking, he said him and his wife with their home portal have described to each other what they've seen, and they've been surprised at the colors or patterns they see are very similar. Do you have any comment?
That's interesting. And I think it's a good reason they are married. So maybe that's the reason. But on the other, something, yeah. When we did workshops where we worked with one and the same session with different people at the same time, they after the experience, they had the impression as if they have shared common experience, as if they joined in that experience, and they also described things very similar. But interestingly, if the session was not shown to them at the same time, this effect was not that strong.
There might be some kind of greater consciousness forming, or some kind of correlation and kind of entrainment together, kind of like a therapist and a client. They have to kind of entrain their nervous systems. Do you think it's something similar to this?
Hard to say. It's all, you can just speculate, very interesting speculations, but hard to say. In the end, it's also important to say the lamp, although it has a huge effect, it's just a pulsing light and a constant light. It's just nothing. Everything which is happening is done by the one who is sitting in front of the lamp. And what he does and why he does it, I think nobody knows. One thing which I've learned is human beings are always thinking about what they are doing and why they are doing it and what they should do next. But I don't think that these thoughts have something to do with what they are actually doing. It's just their way of entertaining themselves. So yeah, we always think and making our theories, and yeah, it's big fun, but if it has something to do with reality, or if there is reality at all, I don't think that's not the best means to find that, get to that.
Yes, yeah, totally. I understand. Okay, Michelle is asking, is there any way to help people who get nausea in the light?
Yeah, first of all, it is important to mention that the lamp is one technique, and not every technique is for everyone. So if someone does not feel comfortable with the lamp and it does not improve, it could be that it's just not his technique. But on the other side, if people feel not comfortable or get kind of nausea, but when the flickering starts, I usually ask them to look differently into what they are seeing, because the way you look into it is the way you create it. And when something which you are experiencing makes you feel uncomfortable, you can change that by the way you look into it. And you can change it also by looking in different directions. So really with your closed eyes, of course, but looking differently up and down, and you see immediately there's a three-dimensional space opening in front of you, and this changes the experience a little bit, because this nausea is sometimes the cause of it is that there is something three-dimensional, and you try to interpret it by yourself, or see it as a two-dimensional experience, because you cannot imagine seeing something three-dimensional when your eyes are closed. So it's a kind of paradoxical thing. You close your eyes and you see bright colors and even other things. This can induce a kind of uncomfortable feeling, but by the way you're looking into it or looking through what you're seeing is a good means to get over that. So I would try that way.
Great, that's very helpful. Thank you. And let's see, the next question is from Evan. Has there been any entity contact with the light, like the machine elf phenomenon from DMT?
Of course. And also, these are very, very individual experience. I meet people sitting in front of the lamp for the first time, and they have complex hallucinations. They're seeing landscapes, faces, animals, things like that, or even totally strange environments, which feel strangely known to them, things like that at the first time. And others, they just see colors and some geometric patterns, kaleidoscopic things, and nothing like hallucinations of other kinds of complex hallucinations at all. That's individual, and I think it depends on the way, and first on the ability to let yourself go into the experience, and second, your experience you have before, maybe with other techniques or meditation or something like that.
Yes.
And to the Lucia from before, because I've seen something, someone written there, it's very important. All the things which are true for a psychedelic experience that, concerning the setting are also true for the Lucia session. So you should not eat too much or drink no alcohol before doing it, because that could also lead to some kind of strange experiences.
Yes, for sure. And Nigel is asking, at Light Eye Mind, they took Lucia to Boston for 6 weeks as a crossover between technology and art through the introduction of neuro art. They were visited by many addicts who said they wished they'd heard of it before, as it would have helped them as a transition for coming off their chemical dependencies. Have you worked with anyone in the addiction population or researched this in more depth?
I did not do any research about that, but I have some experiences with that. And it's amazing that I would say for some people, the Lucia experience, the hypnagogic light experience, helps them a lot to get out of different kind of addictions. We had, from the beginning on, when I was working with a lamp, I remember the first time there was a lady who just visited me to see the lamp and had no special reason for that, just to see it for herself, and had a session about 20 minutes. And someday after that, she phoned me and told me that she stopped smoking after that, which amazed her a lot, because she tried that for many years and never succeeded. So she thought that she would smoke forever. And suddenly she did it by just automatically. And as far as I know, I heard nothing from her for a long time now, but some years I had contact with her, and she did not start smoking again, as I know. And there was also a heroin addicted woman who wanted to go to the hospital and have a lamp session before. And after the lamp session, she decided not to go to the hospital and withdraw by herself from her heroin addiction, which I was not on her side. I said she should go to the hospital, but she did not. And she also succeeded. So, and there are new, as far as I know, there is a lot of research at the moment which shows that, especially psilocybin, and as far as I know from one breaking convention, also DMD and 5-MeO DMD have extreme interesting effects on people with addiction. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, yeah. I've also had many clients over the years who are getting through addictions and have found Lucia Light sessions very powerful. Personally, I feel part of it may also be the nervous system kind of reorientation, that if someone is an addict and they're still holding on to something to bring them something, there's this deeper relaxation that hasn't been possible in their system.
Yeah, and you must not forget that even in the Alcoholic Anonymous movement, there was at the beginning and at the original concept, there was a psychedelic experience as a top experience, as a very important part of the program, and it makes much sense. But also here, it is the individual attitude which is the reason if it serves you well or not so well. Because I can imagine that going into the lamp experience is also going into a deep dissociative experience. So the more you dive into the beauty and the more you see it as an art experience, the more you can allow yourself to go into that beauty you see in front of you. The more intensely is that dissociation from your identification with your body. And that's also the effect of the near-death experience. Back again here, you experience consciousness as something which is not in the body, but the body as being something in the consciousness. And as that point of view changes, you're totally relaxed because you know, now I have no enemy anymore forever. And you can do what you want. In that moment, you are exactly at that point of consciousness, in that state of mind. Drugs, the people who are using drugs trying to find which they cannot. And if someone allows himself to go that deep into the experience, he sees that what he always was looking for is just right before, in front of his nose. And so he doesn't need the drugs anymore to go there, which does not make the symptoms of not using the drugs anymore less severe, but you can endure it much easier.
Beautiful. Yes. Dissolution of the ego of the addict itself. So that's what they're looking for. That's great. Okay. And then Deb wants to know, what is the most important update you can provide since the last Lucia Congress that you think that practitioners should be aware
of? For me personally, the controller is the most interesting thing, because I can do things with the controller now I never could do before with the lamp by itself. And the controller allows also effects which you cannot do with the lamp without the controller. And the idea, the original idea with the lamp was to do, it was something Dirk had coined the term bidirectional neurofeedback. The idea of Dirk, and I find it extremely fascinating, was to find a way that the brain can interact with itself by the experience without your ego, without your consciousness, in a way, and with the controller, you can do exactly that. Because if you're sitting in front of the lamp or lying under the lamp and you use the controller, the pattern, of course, there is some, I think there is a kind of description. I wrote once a description how you should do it for the first time so that you learn to know which button does what. But you cannot keep that in your mind when you are using the controller. And that's the most essential point, because you're sitting there doing something with your hands, which you do not understand, because the more you try to think about what you're doing there, it does not work. So you just do something and watch there. And in the moment, you do not think about which button should I push now, but just do something. You get into a flow, which is created by the brain, because the way the light affects the brain makes the brain affect the hand, which is using the controller. And this experience is just, it's undescribable, but after a while, for most of my clients, it's very easy to go into that, because most of the people are used to that kind of controller. So we chose that kind of controller, which everybody knows. So it's very easy to go into a kind of intuitive mode of using it. And by doing that, you step into that bidirectional neurofeedback. And same point as before, you're just watching. And this is your most important experience. Everything which happens, your behavior, your experience, you're just watching it. You never did something else, and you never will do something else. You're just watching, and that's what you are. And this experience is the most intense de-identification with all you ever thought you are. And what stays is, oh, I'm just watching. And in a moment you know that you're just watching, you never are worried about what happens in the scenery you're watching, because you know, doesn't affect me. It's just I'm just watching.
Yes, beautiful. Great. And let's see. Evan is wondering, what has been the experience of combining psychedelics with the lamp? Are some psychedelics better suited than others? For example, LSD versus psilocybin, or is there microdosing? Do you recommend?
I would say, I know, because Stan Grove told me one time that the combination with the stroboscope and LSD opened for him a very, very profound experience, which was more profound than LSD by itself or a stroboscope by itself. And we did a lot of experiments with the combination of other substances and the lamp. And here also it's very individual, but I would say the tryptamines, they go very well with the lamp. Cannabis also extremely well. Alcohol I would not prefer. Although some of my clients are intense alcoholics, and by conviction they never would like to change that. So and they can use the lamp in a way just as everyone else, although they are drinking on a level which usually is quite a high risk for epileptic seizure when you combine that with a stroboscope. Yeah, so differently, but you should be very, very careful, I would say, because I would put it that way. If you are very well experienced with one substance, then the lamp can help you very well to go into a more intense mode of the experience with that substance. Maybe that.
Great. Yes, that's a good answer. And again, it's so individual for everyone, right? So it's about taking it doing yourself. Some people can take.
Yeah, one point, sorry, one point might be interesting. If you combine the lamp with a psychedelic experience, you can use the lamp also to modify the psychedelic experience. So if you have an LSD experience or DMT experience, or a psilocybin experience would be more interesting because it lasts a little longer, then you can use the lamp to, not all the time, but for a certain point, to change the experience or give it a different direction. That could be a good idea.
Great. Wonderful. Yeah, that sounds very interesting. Okay, let's see. More questions. What do we have here? Someone was asking, how would you compare the Lucia light to a float tank experience?
I cannot do that because I never had a float tank experience. I'm hoping to have one sometimes, but I never had. But I can imagine that there is something in common, because I know a guy who has a float tank, and he worked very hard on combining it with Lucia, which did not work because of the float tank. But he also said these two things could go very good together because they're very similar. So maybe.
Yeah, I had an amazing opportunity of experiencing the Lucia light in a float tank.
Oh,
Yeah, in California at Float State, and they set it up just for me because obviously it's quite dangerous with electricity and many factors. So that hasn't been offered, very legally, but it was absolutely incredible. I would say that the feeling of dissolution of the body happens much more quickly. The only thing was that in a float tank, you move around a little bit. And so it also changed the vision from the light because I was moving. So until I could finally get a still place, then I could let go. So that was slightly distracting, but it's a really beautiful experience in combination.
Yeah, I can imagine that. For myself, I think about it in a way just like virtual reality. If you have a virtual reality headset, it's very beautiful. But if you're hanging in a kind of installation where you can move in the room freely, up and down and three-dimensional, and have a virtual reality headset, then it's a much better thing. So that could be the same with but for that we would have to make Lucia as a kind of goggles because when you move around in the float tank, it should move with you, of course. But the most interesting and the best idea would be making the float tank, Lucia by itself, and swimming inside of Lucia, so by that way. So because you can integrate the lamps in the wall of the float tank. So if there is, are there 4 Lucias, would be enough in the float tank. Then you can move very freely.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Definitely. All right, who's ready to do that? Let's go. Wonderful. Okay, so let's see. We have time for about one more question here. Michael's asking, what excites you the most moving forward in your field or with a lamp? And is there any new area that you're interested in exploring?
For myself, at the moment, I know that the company is working on the combination of the lamp with a new kind of sound system, which is doing something very simple, but has a very, very, very intense effect. And as I mentioned before, at the end of the last year, I had the opportunity to experience that by myself, just the first steps of that development, which will go a little further in the next month. I was totally blown away. I never expected something like that. I always thought that it would be good to have some kind of sound which fits perfectly to the Lucia experience. But I never had an idea how this could be done properly. I have met a lot of people who thought about that and tried a lot of things, even composed pieces of music for that experience, but it never really worked. And what I heard in Berlin last December, it worked extremely well. And there was a very simple sound, a very simple sound. The main point what was done with that sound, the way it was presented to me, made that the colors changed, and I saw different things and things I'd never seen before in the moment it started. So as far as I know, and I hope it's the way Sigurd told me, it should not last more than half a year or something like that. That is can be experienced in a way. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. Yeah, we're all very excited to catch up with you on that. And yeah, just one last question also. Could you describe the most recent studies that have come out? I believe there's something showing that the same areas in the brain are activated as psilocybin as the Lucia. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Oh, I have to admit that I'm not over interested in studies. I'm just keeping an eye on them in a way if there's something new. And I think that in the last month, there really have emerged some studies which are extremely relevant for what we are doing. David Schwartzman sent me an article, but I could not find the time to read it. I just overlooked it, and it had something to do with some cerebral fluids, which can be stimulated with flickering light in a way which never thought was possible, and has extremely intense effects on health issues. This one, then there has been some new work about the receptors of addicted people and the relationship to the therapeutic use of psilocybin. And in England, at the Breaking Convention, there were a lot of talks about a lot of new science which had been done on topics like these. The exploration of an intense DMT experience by giving the persons the DMT constantly over 20 minutes, so that the level is always at the same time, so they can explore a DMT experience, which usually is just some minutes. The DMT flash, 20 minutes flash. And what they found out by doing that about the substance, what the substance does with the body, and about the experience, because when the first amazement about the experience is gone, you go into it much more calmly, and then you interact with it much more freely, which you never thought is possible when you just are hit by it. So, and what's true for that is always true for all the other kind of psychedelic experience, and also for all the other techniques to go into that. So I think the pool of knowledge we have, or we are collecting about what we are doing, which nobody knows what it is in the end, gets more and more also scientifically interesting.
Yes, absolutely. Very exciting times we have here, and thank you for all the work you do and your innovation, and love your character of just always looking to how to expand things. And Engelbert's a great role model of not getting too in your head with the studies and the exact frequencies and things, but being open to the possibility of what can happen. So thank you for all the work that you do with the Lucia Light. Thanks for being here today. And do you have any last advice that you would give to anyone who is a practitioner holding space, or anyone experiencing their own sessions with the lamp?
When I'm looking back on my life as a psychotherapist, I would say, if I could help people to allow them to be just the way they are, just that and nothing else, then this was the best thing I experienced. And I think that's the main point. That's the thing I remember, I like to remember best. And with the lamp, you can do that in a way that most of the people are impressed by their own beauty. And that's something, if you see it from that point of view, because I usually work with people who are in very, very severe conditions. So it's, yeah. And people who don't have much looking for. But in the moment they allow themselves to letting go into the hypnagogic light experience, they are amazed by the beauty they see. And by thinking it is the lamp, they enjoy it extremely, and telling them after that, or reminding them. So this was just the white light, and it was you yourself, which you've seen yourself, and to help them to recognize what that means. I think that's worth doing it.
Absolutely. Yes, it's within all of us. Ah, that beauty. Okay, well, thank you so much. Lots of people are saying thank you in the chat. Really appreciate it, Engelbert. And thanks everyone for joining. We'll have a 10-minute break here, and then our next speaker up will be Kat speaking about a very interesting talk. So get ready and we'll see you in a little bit. And thank you so much, Engelbert. Appreciate it.